person. So I was bringing out my phone because I was like, oh, I'll do work now. And then Samir started talking and I was fascinated. He was one of the first people to make data actually interesting for me. So I promised myself if I ever had an event that he was relevant, that he would be here, and he is. So just a little bit about Samir. Samir Vasta can usually be found at the Mars Discovery District, but is currently on loan to the Government of Ontario, where he is working to create models for organizational change and to implement experiential, iterative programs and policies. No small feat. Over the past decade, Samir has collaborated with organizations such as the World Bank and the Aga Khan Development Network to create frameworks to help them do their work better, including open data strategy consultations for the World Bank. Thank you so much, Samir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope you don't mind the perch here. I just need to hold on to something because of the limb. But that whole bio really to say is that my job is when people need help doing really unsexy things, that's when they bring me in. So today I'm going to talk to you about one of the least sexy things possible in not-for-profits, and that's human resources. So you've been hearing a lot about this crazy potential about the Internet of Things and magic and everyone being connected, and what does that all mean? And there's so much potential. But sometimes you get caught because you say, I want to do all of these things, but the problem is I can't. We are in a time where we are expected to do more with less. We have shrinking budgets, we can't hire as many people. We kind of feel like robots with big hearts. We want to do so many things, but we have to do what works because that's the only thing we can consecrate time to. So when you're thinking about all of that, you just have to say, okay, I need to do more, but if I have less, what do I need to cut? Do I cut operations? Do I cut governance? Do I cut well, obviously not cutting fundraising. And you cut service delivery, and you can't cut service delivery because that is the core of what you do as a nonprofit. So how do you manage to take all of these challenges that you have in a time of austerity, perceived or not, and try and do everything that you want to do and leverage all this technology that we've been hearing about today? And I've got the secret. The secret answer is let others do your work, okay? So there are hundreds and thousands of people who want to help you do your work. We have a problem, I think, in the not-for-profit sector where, we're in the business of spreading this light that Edith Wharton talks about. But for so long, we're used to being the candle. We want to be the source of that light to people. But there are thousands of other people who have a candle themselves. And we need to start thinking about how we can be the mirrors to that light and not just that light. How do we do that? Well, this is where that whole series of gears and tubes and pipes that are virtual, not real, but I don't understand the virtual stuff that much. I understand the real stuff a little bit more. But all of that technology that we've been hearing about today can help us find, tap, identify, mobilize, and connect those resources that we need, that don't currently exist, that aren't sitting here, but want to be, or at least want to be where you are and helping you do it. I've got 3 examples of organizations that are doing this right now. I'm going to quickly go through them, and then I'd love to chat more about at the break on how we can help you do your work that way. The first is Kudos. Kudos is a program out of Vancouver. They're run by a program called In With Forward, and they are a adult with disability day program. And most adult with disability day programs, essentially, you go to your center, the way they say it is you do day camp for adults for 30 years of your life. You go there, they take you bowling, and then they have a pottery class and then something else. And then you go and do the same thing the next day, and you go and do the same thing next day. It doesn't really empower people, but it also requires a lot of resources to keep that going. You need to bring people into the center, you need to make sure that you have people that are willing to train. How do you actually let other people do that work for you? So what Kudos did is created a mobile application that's easy to use for people that with developmental disabilities who attend these day programs, and they connect them to local businesses and service organizations that want to do interesting things with them. So for example, a bakery says, well, Monday mornings are really slow for me, so I can host a cupcake making class on Monday mornings. And people, based on their interests, are shown these kinds of things that are available to them, and then they can opt to go there, and they're connected with someone they call a transitologist, which is another volunteer that helps them find a way to get there. And then these programs are actually delivered by the bakery or by the pet store that wants to teach you all about iguanas. Right? So all of a sudden, you're creating a richness of experience for the people in the day program, but you're also letting your programs be delivered by other people who want to help, but who not necessarily were in that system before. Technology enables that to happen. Another program I want to talk about is the Central Park Conservancy. I lived in New York before I lived in Toronto, so Central Park's, I would say central to my life, but yes, literally. But Central Park Conservancy has a mandate to keep the park going, to make sure it's cared for, and to raise money to keep the park vibrant. And they realized that they could do all these things, and they could hire programmers and event planners and all of these things. That's great, but the people who actually got the most done, and the people that came to these events, are people who cared about the park, who walked through it every day on their way to work, who took their kids to play. So they created an online social platform for these people to appoint themselves as stewards of the park. And what they did is they empowered those stewards, saying, hey, I'm going to give you points if you do this, or we're going to profile you if you do this. And all of a sudden, you had these stewards who were coming out and saying, I love this park. I want to take care of this park, doing events, cleaning up the park, having kids drop in programs. As a side benefit, a lot of their programs had a fundraising element to it. So the Conservancy met a ton of their fundraising goals. They didn't have to do any of that work. They didn't have to do the programming, the fundraising. They set up a platform so that people who actually cared and who wanted to get involved and who previously didn't know how could get connected and do the work of the Conservancy for them. Now, some of you might be thinking, a lot of our programs, though, either the people that we reach out to don't have access to technology or don't want to use it because of privacy risks or something that they identify. And I want to talk about Family by Family, which is a program run by Taxi out of Australia. And the program is fascinating. It takes families that were in vulnerable positions, whether that in positions of domestic abuse or poverty or something of the sort, or street active, and who have made their way out of that by using social programs. They use them as peer-to-peer counselors and peer-to-peer social workers for families that are currently in that position. Now, all of this, because of access, is done in person. So a lot of people don't want to self-identify these kinds of things, or some people just do not have access to the technology. So what they've been doing is all of this in person, but what Taxi has been able to do is create a back-end infrastructure. And the back-end infrastructure is for the social workers. So instead of having one social worker work to the max trying to manage 8 cases, now one social worker is able to use this back-end infrastructure to identify linkages to say this family would work well with this, and then do case management online with their fellow social workers, but the actual social work's being done through these families in person. So they're able to connect people, have a peer-to-peer social work program. The social workers are now able to serve way more people than they could have before, so do more with less, because they have a technology backbone that connects all of these things. So I've gone over time, I got a little bit of a wave, but I want to say that human resources doesn't have to be unsexy, because technology gives you that opportunity to identify, mobilize, and connect resources that you never knew you had. I like to call technology as a resource catalyst. I use the word catalyst way too much, but it really does work. It will catalyze people who you never thought would be involved in your work to do your work for you, do your work with you, and do your work better. And please use that, and I would love to chat with you afterwards on how we can work together to get that to happen. Thank you.